The hardest thing for us is we opened a world-class 30,000 seat stadium and got a really good year in, won a heap of awards, and then closed the doors. So it's it'll be nice. It'll be nice to get back home.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The business of feeding people reaches far beyond a restaurant or cafe. With restrictions in place, how many hospitality workers were employed at stadiums where tens of thousands of people are fed over a short period? But in a pandemic, there's also the need to feed people returning home that are placed in quarantine, and of course, our frontline workers, such as the medical, military, and police force. Martin Dulke leads the kitchen team at Australia's brand new 30,000 seat venue, Bankwest Stadium in Sydney's western suburbs. Martin, how are you going?
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. With the closure of all of the stadiums because of social restrictions and and events and games like the NRL, what was the immediate impact on what you do day to day?
Yeah, it was pretty huge, Hux. It was pretty huge. I mean, you can imagine we came sort of straight out of doing a Queen concert at ANZ Stadium and then firefight concert, so 2 sellout crowds within a weekend, to pretty much starting to wind down not so long after that. So the games, I think we only got in one game at Bankwest Stadium at the beginning of the season with no crowd. And then the pin was pulled on the whole deal, so there was nothing. So it hit pretty hard. About 3,000 casuals were basically stood down from our operations, and that's across our other venues as well, which is Eastern Creek Raceway and the whole of the State Sports Centre and all Cogra Footy Ground and those sorts of places as well.
What's it like working and cooking in an empty stadium?
It's been pretty eerie, I must say. For the first couple of weeks when we sort of didn't have too much to do, we went into stock control. So clearly, having all these big stadiums across New South Wales and our big stadium at Optus Stadium in Perth, we obviously need to know what our bottom line is, I suppose, and work out exactly sort of what we're carrying and use by date. So for the first time, I think in my career, which is a few too many years, a few more than I care to mention, but it's probably the first time I've actually done a stock take by date, by use by date, and so we jumped on, all hands on deck, and everybody from the corporate side to the kitchen team of 7 of us jumped in and started doing stock takes across all of our stadiums and all our operations to work out exactly where we were at. Things like, soft drinks and packets of chips and all that sort of stuff that retail sell that we don't normally have a lot to do with. We're sort of having to work through that to work out exactly what our bottom line was.
Can you give us a scale of, how many people are employed to feed that many people at these sort of events? I know there's multiple stadiums, but perhaps we could pick one and just, at a big event, what does it take to feed people?
Yeah, so let's pick the biggest one. We've just sort of the biggest weekend we just did, which was the back-to-back Queen concert at ANZ, and then followed by firefight. You're probably looking at in the kitchen brigade for those days. You're probably looking at about 150 to 200 kitchen team. So everybody from chefs to stewards to kitchen hands to everybody that's associated. That doesn't include the security and the customer service and the retail people and those sorts of things. I mean, the team I'm associated with, we purely do corporate. We look after the corporate side of things. So on a corporate event like that, we're probably feeding anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big.
Has food changed a lot in stadiums? Like out at Bankwest Stadium, I think it's not the typical stadium food that people, normally think about, just hot dogs and chips and pies. Can you tell us about what you do there?
Yeah, we've reinvented the wheel, really. I mean, we just, there had to be change. I mean, we've got a brand new spanking stadium that's just won, I think it's the 9th award, and we really had to bring something different to the public, and everything from our from our burgers through to, sort of everything that we do. The chips aren't standard anymore. We use an Olsen sea salt, smoked sea salt on our chips and things like that, and rosemary and stuff like that. So we really have changed it. When people go to an event like that, we really want to make sure that they can eat well. Because otherwise you find people will just go outside the stadium, have dinner somewhere, or go to the pub or something. But we really want to sort of attract those people to come in and enjoy the whole experience.
What's the response been to that? I know right now, obviously, we're in a pandemic and the stadium isn't open for food, but when you rolled that out initially, what was the response from the public?
Yeah, really good. I mean, really good. We spent a lot of time just on the way our food looked as well, the presentation. And just, even the packaging through our corporate retail. We have some corporate retail sections at Bankwest. So even the packaging that we were using, we are super sustainable at Bankwest Stadium. We're super environmentally friendly, so we use no plastics. So it's, the containers, the funny thing now, the containers that everybody's using for all their little restaurant cafe takeaways are the containers we've been using for a year now since we opened Bankwest. So, there's now a massive shortage in Sydney of that sort of packaging.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
So you work with some pretty amazing producers at the stadium. Have you seen any impact on those guys since, you can't use them anymore in many ways, or the ways that you were using?
Yeah, Hux, we really have. It's one of those things, you can imagine sort of the volume we're purchasing, everything from, pallets of chips through to, the fruit and veg and things like that. I mean, it's pretty horrendous to sit back and think, oh, we're not buying, we're normally getting 10 trucks a day when we've got a big cook coming up for leading into an event, and to know that and I'm sort of I've reached out to a few of those people and had a chat to them to see how they are and stuff like that. But it's kind of it's kind of really disheartening to think, these suppliers that we were talking to every day, we're no longer dealing with at all. So it's pretty chaotic, I suppose. And I mean, on the only good side of that is, and we'll no doubt touch on it in a minute, is quarantine cuisine. But we managed to reach out and get some of our suppliers on board and help them out, which we can go into a bit later.
Well, let's jump into that now, because you've got empty stadiums, and we don't really know when society is going to be allowed to be part of big events again. But you've been doing a lot of initiatives since the pandemic. Can you tell us, what role you've been playing in feeding people?
Yeah, we once the quarantine started and people were flying back into Sydney and had to be quarantined, they started using 13 hotels in the city for people that they would check in and stay for 2 weeks, and once they're given a medical clearance, they're allowed back into society. We were contacted by the government. Obviously, the stadiums are owned by the government, so we work very closely with them. And we were contacted by the government to jump in and help. Some of the hotels in the city were just getting absolutely slammed. Probably your worst chef nightmare of being just absolutely slaughtered. Be like the docket printer printing continually for 4 hours. So we had about 72 hours to do a proposal.
Wow.
And put in a tender. The team, we sort of sat down and came up with menus and things that would cover a lot of dietaries and bits and pieces, and then we stepped in and took over the Travelodge Wynyard and the Travelodge Sydney, and feeding to combine those hotels can house about 1,100 people. And I think to date, the numbers that I've heard this week, we've just hit our 65,000th meal.
Wow.
In about 6 or 7 weeks. So, yeah, it's a huge undertaking. Obviously, we're used to doing volume, and that's something we're good at. And we're used to being very precise on our HACCP and our food safety and things like that. So again, that's this was perfect for us. So, and we had the facilities, ANZ Stadium, multi-million-dollar kitchen, and we had the facilities at sitting there doing nothing. So it was an actually perfect opportunity with our with our distribution network that we have already based at the stadium, because we feed all our smaller stadiums and our other venues. So we're pretty much we're geared up, ready to go, and we actually got it up and running in 3 days.
When people are in quarantine for 14 days, what's the responsibility in regards to what you need to provide for their diet, and how do you construct a menu that way?
Look, it's pretty hard. I mean, you don't know. We've just kicked off round 3. I'm at the Travelodge in Sydney, in Wentworth Street at the moment, and we've just kicked off our 3rd round. So people started checking in on Tuesday. And it's slowly. On Tuesday we received 12. We're now up to, I think we're doing dinner tonight for about 320. The dietary thing is the biggest thing. So you've got to imagine these people are coming from all over the world, all different religions and so forth. So the dietary side of it's pretty big. We've got a dietary team at ANZ Stadium that do the initial process and then send it to me at the hotel, and then I break it down and make sure that everybody here, everybody from a pregnant woman to somebody who's allergic to onion and garlic, So I think this round starting, we're not too bad this round. The last round, I think out of 520 people, I think we had 126 dietary requirements.
Wow!
So it's a fairly large undertaking for a 3-week period. Because by the time they start checking in. By the time they start checking in, they dribble in. So every day, like we've had more people check in today, so that adds 14 days to our contract. So the contract ends once the hotel is full, and we get to the end of the 14 days. So it's pretty crazy.
What sort of team does it take to feed that many people? I know you're used to doing large events, and have you lost staff in this process because of the pandemic, or have you been able to bring many of them back to do this?
Yeah, we're really lucky. I think we've bought. Obviously our full-time team was still entrenched, and we still had a lot to do. And the same with our front of house teams from our various venues. I mean, I'm sitting in the restaurant, which we've now turned into a distribution centre at the Travelodge in Sydney, and I'm looking now, and I've got staff from all over our State Sports Centre and places like that, and they're getting ready. They're setting up each floor, its dietary requirements and so forth. And I go through and I check on those sorts of dietary requirements, check every box is labelled, and we make sure that, Joe on floor 19 is getting his correct meal. But we were really lucky enough to start bringing back, I suppose with the help of JobKeeper as well, start to bring back some of our casual brigade. There's probably about 15 to 20 at ANZ Stadium today. That's the same every day now while we're working through this, and then it's trucked over to the hotel, and then we break it down once it gets here, and then we start, the only hot meal of the day is the dinner that's prepared at night. So I've got a team of chefs here, which are casual chefs, so we've been able to bring those guys back in. I've got 3 chefs with me here tonight, so we'll produce a hot meal, and it's not your normal hot meal either. So it's still we're still doing our sort of corporate type meals, the same as what we would do in our stadium. So our menu's sort of rolled out straight into this situation.
With the fact that we don't really know when we can attend large events again, and the big impact it's had on our society, can you tell us sort of what you've gone through personally in this experience of when the pandemic first happened, and how you feel about your career and the industry that you're in?
Yeah, good question. Look, it's one of those situations, and I actually had this conversation today with somebody. I've got a new 57 new policeman friends because we feed them every day. And I was saying to one of them today, when I became a chef, I never expected my career as a chef to be challenged. I always thought there would always be work for a chef, and it wouldn't matter where I was in the world. I would pick up work as a chef or a cook or whatever. I suppose I'm one of the lucky ones that was based in a company that was very entrenched in looking after their staff. So there was no real time that I sort of was too worried about my job, but there was always the unknown. There was the unknown of, gee, are we going to be stood down, or are we going to be closed completely? Once we started, we've done the massive cleanup, and we've done preparation of our systems and gone through our recipes and menus and things, and there's a fair bit of work you can always do on that. But just a lot of my friends and a lot of my mates who are chefs who have been stood down. It's sort of reaching out to those guys to make sure they're okay. I mean, I did get a lot of phone calls from people saying, "Hey, do you know of any work going?" It's just unprecedented times, and I would imagine I hope we never see this sort of stuff again in my career or my lifetime. But just really. I think just waking up and thinking, oh my God, people, and seeing cafes and restaurants closed and hearing of them closing permanently, because of this, is just horrendous. Like, it's in a industry I love, and seeing it sort of deep in the weeds, if you like. It's one of those. It's something I never expected. Something I never in a million years expected. I always thought, if I wasn't, I had my own restaurant for 10 years. I'm glad. I'm so glad I don't own my own restaurant. I'm so glad I work for a big company. It's incredible.
You touched on briefly just before about a connection that you have with police, and I know you've been feeding the police force and the military and medical professionals as well. Can you tell us a bit about that? And have you had any insight to the experience that they've been having during this pandemic?
Yeah, pretty crazy. Like, just the stories. And currently, at the moment, we have 57 police on a rotating roster here. We have up to 10 nurses and doctors here, and at the moment we have Navy in today, and they're changing over to Air Force tomorrow, and there's 16 of them. They guard every exit here, so if you can imagine sitting on a stool outside a door for 8 hours and staring into a street, it's not comfortable, and I think it's probably a pretty hard gig. I mean, a lot of these police. Actually, I bumped into a policeman yesterday who I haven't seen for 7 years. I used to play footy with. He's a detective. He normally doesn't wear a uniform, so he's now dressed in a uniform and sitting on a stool at a fire exit outside in Goulburn Street in the cold for 8 hours a day for 6 weeks. So they're contracted for 6 weeks, those guys. So it's a rotating roster, obviously, so they do their normal sort of 12-hour days or 8-hour days, and we have a command centre at the other end of the restaurant, so I get to meet a few of the inspectors and so forth, and it's a tough gig for these people. It's not, even though they're being fed really, really well, and they're loving it, and they're all complaining they're going home fat, but it is a tough gig. It is a really tough gig for them, and same with the medical staff. Like, it's just so unknown. It's so unknown when a bus arrives and the whole building becomes, like a quarantine station as people are checking in and going into their rooms. They're doing an amazing job. I can tell you, I have a whole new respect for the military, medical, and police. I mean, obviously they've never had to do anything like this in their careers, and let's hope they don't have to do it again. But it's an absolute eye opener, because it's the amount of paperwork and the amount of organisation. I think there's 10 hotels in the city here in Sydney that are all full, and all have the same amount of military, medical, and police support.
Now, you're feeding all these people coming back into the country and all of these people in the front line. But I heard something along the grapevine that your food's pretty highly rated amongst them. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, it's pretty funny. Like, a few of the police there's some heap of characters, and there's a few of the young sergeants that we've had through. And the other night, my sort of office that I've built inside the restaurant has a glass window, looks out to Albert Lane, and there's a police car parked out the back all day long, and there's 2 police sitting in it. And when it's a nice day, they sort of stand outside. And when we first started, A couple of the young guys came up and got their food, and they took it downstairs, and it was like being in a restaurant and watching the food influencers taking photos of their food. These two boys opened up their dinner boxes and put them on the bonnet of the police car and were shooting photos of it. And and I saw them later. I said, "What were you boys doing?" And they said, "Oh, just sharing with the rest of the team how good our food is here." So there is a rating system. We're sitting at the top of the tree at the moment. I think it may have something to do with the Maxi Bon ice creams they got for dessert last night.
Nice.
But it's actually really good. And they're so. We do get a lot of feedback. There's a lot of feedback coming back through to our company, to Venues Live, through the guests staying in the hotel. We give them the opportunity to send us emails. We get tagged in a lot of stuff on social media, and it was really funny. When we got in here, this hotel had been catering for 3 days prior to us arriving, and there was a girl who was in her room, and she'd started an Instagram page called Julia's Quarantine Meals or something or other, and she posted and opened up, and I sat it on her windowsill and posted a photo of her lunch that we'd provided on our first day, and she just said, "Oh my God, the caterers have changed." And it was like a massive win, because seriously, we threw this thing together in three or 4 days. And then to get that sort of feedback straight away. But the services, the police, the military, everybody is so thankful for their dinner. And last night was spaghetti bolognese and bread and salad and Maxi Bon ice creams and drinks and so forth. And to have them to come and thank you personally, like it's kind of really nice. They're doing a great job, but it's a really good opportunity, because the services are getting the same food that we're feeding the guests. So we do hear a lot of the time from the military and the police, they say there's no way anyone could ever complain about these meals. So, which is really good feedback. It's good feedback for us, and we pass that straight back to the team back at the stadiums as well, to make sure that it's a big team effort. So it's fantastic.
What has this operation taught you that you might use in the future at stadiums?
We've actually had a little bit of a joke about this week. We have a beautiful, beautiful award-winning stadium, and it's sort of been put in mothballs for a little, cotton wool and stuff for a little while. It's our change of the way we're feeding people at the stadium, obviously with restaurants and things reopening sort of from the 1st of June. People have got to make some changes on how they address the situation. So I know I've been reading through the briefs for looking after the two teams on Friday nights, which is the Rabbits and the Roosters, and the way the meals will be served to them. Normally and the outside broadcast guys too, so the people responsible for getting the game on TV. So there's 50 of those in on Friday night. So they will be handed a meal pack rather than a buffet. So normally those guys are fed on a buffet. So the days of a buffet have gone for us in the stadium. So the corporate market, which is normally fed a beautiful buffet on beautiful equipment and beautiful china and stuff, is going to change for a little while until we get completely to the other side of this. So just the way we package, the way we present, we're even on our little dinner boxes, and I'll put this up I'll post a photo up on my socials this week, but we put a little bit of red and white greaseproof paper in the bottom of our cardboard box just to make it look picnicky and make it look a little bit better. And we're doing that. We're doing that 1,500 times a day. So somebody back at our stadium is packing little cardboard boxes with little pieces of red and white paper in them. So, but it means that somebody's got a job and somebody's doing some work. So it's fantastic. But look, hygiene's always been really big on our agenda anyway. And I mean, imagine we're looking after 80,000 plus people at the big stadium and 30,000 at the little stadium. Hygiene's really important no matter what we do. So this is just it's just reiterated with us that the things we do are good practice, and hopefully there's some in the industry that probably needed to look at that a little bit better. That'll probably teach them some lessons as well. So. But yeah, well, look, the way we've gone about it is sort of how we go about it normally anyway. But all we've really done this time is added a face mask, and I know in the big kitchen at ANZ that everybody's in all the protective gear and face masks and lots of gloves and the glove. I'd love to have shares in a glove company or a mask company, yeah, or in a cardboard box company for that matter. But it has taught us. It has taught us. It's things we've learnt through what we're doing at the hotels. It's kind of what we do in our corporate retail market anyway, the way we present. But now we're going to do that with presenting to our corporates when corporates are allowed back in. Once the government, we'll follow the government guidelines on that when we can get crowds back in. For a while, people will be fed the same way in a corporate environment. So, disposable cutlery and we're now looking hard at how you can present something really well in a cardboard box with a lid, which is interesting. But yeah, no, there's a lighter side to it too, because we've sort of thought, well, when we got the sort of brief from the NRL about how we need to look after their referees and players and so forth, and we sort of everyone just looked at each other and go, well, we just give them a dinner box like we do at the hotel. So it's the same sort of principle. So it's really good.
So you've painted a kind of a bizarre picture of, stadiums with no crowd, but you're still feeding the people that are attending because they're putting the matches back on. But what's it like on game day with a full house?
Oh, look, it's I still get really excited. It's one of the things as a chef, on the corporate side of things, we still do everything from cocktail parties to buffets to beautiful plated meals, and some of our events. There's a room at the directors lounge at Bankwest Stadium is a beautifully fitted out restaurant. I mean, it is a multi-million-dollar looking restaurant. It's got a massive open kitchen, and I mean, it's still really, really exciting. Obviously, on game day, I'm sort of not on the tools. I do walk around and check on all the things that are happening and making sure that all our corporates are being well looked after, and again, dietaries and things like that. But I still get really excited. When we're called back to ANZ for sort of 80,000 people for firefight. I still get really excited on the day about going to work and just the buzz and the crowd, and it's an absolute rush. So I don't miss the sound of the docket printer, but because we already know what we're feeding people and it's already pre-planned. But I still enjoy the prep days. We prep for 2 or 3 days prior to a really big event, and I still love that. Still love that sort of side of things, and I suppose nurturing the young. We have so many young chefs that we use in our brigades, and it's fantastic being able to sort of pass on knowledge to them. And as you touched on before, our food is different. I do a lot of hashtagging, hashtag stadium food done differently, because it is different. The way we present some of the food to the corporates at Bankwest is completely different to how it's ever been done, and it's a great challenge for us to keep reinventing and making sure that we are, as good as, or if not better than any good restaurant in Sydney.
Do you think this experience that we've had will change the landscape for events and big, large public gatherings in the future?
Yeah, I really do. I think just people in general. I think people will be far more vigilant about their personal hygiene, which is not a bad thing. But I think I know personally, I will use my mobile phone with the built-in credit card in it forever now. Like, I will never touch an ATM or touch an FPOS machine or things like that. So, even just the daily. Even being in the hotel here and going down to the loading dock when our trucks arrive to, make sure we're getting the right stuff off the truck. Touching a button in an elevator has a whole new meaning to it. And the same at work. I mean, we sanitize and wash our hands, 10 times a day anyway. But now it's just another element to that. So it will be completely different. And I think big events. I think it'll be a long time till we see another really big event in Sydney, which crowd-wise. I mean, I know at Bankwest we have Green Day booked, I think, for October or November. I mean, I'm a bit of a Green Day fan, so I'm hoping that October, November is still on the calendar. But so it's going to be a long time, I think, before any sort of normality is back, and I think normality will change. I think normality will be everyone will be far more vigilant about their health and hygiene and things like that. So I think this is really taught us a lot of lessons. And my personal belief is this is Mother Nature has given us a chance to hit the reset button.
You've worked on a lot of big events over the years. Is there anything that stood out for you?
I suppose I keep referring to Firefight. It was probably one of the, having a sort of 10-hour period of a whole heap of different bands coming on and singing 3 or 4 songs has been fantastic. Adele is probably one of the highlights for me. Adele at ANZ Stadium, a couple of concerts in a row, and that was a week of sort of Ed Sheeran, then Adele and Justin Bieber, and it was all about the same sort of 2 or 3 week period. They're pretty amazing events to be involved in. From the writing of the menus, to getting it started and getting it prepped and so forth. And obviously we do the grand finals and state of origins and all those sorts of things. So they're always really big world-class events. But I still love an event out in the middle of a paddock, and I spent some time with brand events and IMG and, like Gourmet Escape and those sorts of things, and I've worked on those, and they're great fun. Like, those sorts of events, are incredible. Lots of people with passionate about food coming into an event. But, events will not be the same for a long time, I don't think.
Well, the NRL season, and you're going to have, a pretty much empty stadium to start with. But how are you going to feel when you're back cooking and the stadiums are packed again?
Yeah, look, I think that'll be a joyous occasion. I mean, I'm at the hotel today, and one of my colleagues is over at Bankwest getting ready to feed. I think he'll feed 100 people. So, which is kind of funny. We had a bit of a joke about it today, and so 2 teams and referees and match officials, and the OB, the TV guys, and we had a bit of a joke about it, and we've been joking for the last 2 or 3 weeks, sort of saying, "Oh, I can't wait to be back home." So we call it, we call Bankwest Stadium home. So can't wait to be back home doing the things that we do. It's going to be a good day. It's seriously going to be a good day. I mean, it's today or tomorrow night is a step in the right direction with the stadium opening with no crowd. There's some funny things going on in the background. There's a drone zooming around Bankwest Stadium yesterday, practicing to spray sanitizer on seats. So they're doing a few tests to see if we can do that, because we will need to do that after every event. So when we do start to get crowds in, those sorts of practices will come into play. So there is some footage floating around of that drone going around Bankwest Stadium yesterday, spraying water, just seeing how viable it is and how well it works. So yeah, things will be different, but we're excited. We're excited that the hardest thing for us is we opened a world-class 30,000 seat stadium and got a really good year in. Won a heap of awards and then closed the doors. So it's it'll be nice. It'd be nice to get back home.
Mate, very much looking forward to attending events on a larger scale as our society opens up again. Good luck with everything. You've been an absolute legend with what you've been doing through this pandemic for so many people. And we're really grateful that you spoke to us today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. No, it's been a really good opportunity. Absolute learning curve for me, and I think the world will be in a better situation once we get through this. And I think when we do get our stadiums open and our restaurants and our bars and our cafes, when we get all that back up and running, I'm totally looking forward to a cold beer with some mates at some stage.
Gee, that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. Just keep in touch.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one. Cheers.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.